Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. After the horror in Uvalde and the mass shooting in Buffalo, Leader Mitch McConnell of the Senate Republicans tasked my guest, Senator John Cornyn, to lead the efforts to negotiate on behalf of Senate Republicans on a package of changes to federal law that could help prevent future such terrible massacres. He joins me now. Good morning, Senator. Welcome. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you, Hugh. Good to be with you.
Where are the negotiations at this morning?
Well, we are narrowing the issues, and I would say we have a final meeting before we break for this week, and we need to make some final decisions on the open items so we can get text written and distributed to our colleagues. Senator Schumer has said he would like to have this bill on the floor next week. The two issues are really what the Democrats like to call the boyfriend loophole, which would cover non-traditional relationships, perhaps long-standing, intimate or romantic relationships that would be subject to the bar of being able to purchase a firearm if you're convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor. The second has to do with the distribution of the funds for crisis intervention. Of course, the whole red flag issue has gotten a lot of attention, but there's a lot of things being done in a number of other states: mental health courts, veterans courts, outpatient assisted treatment for people with mental health challenges to try to help them manage those. There are a lot of things being done across the country that I would like to see share in the money that we are going to be appropriating.
Now, Senator Cornyn, I'm very confident, you're having been a former state Supreme Court justice of the Texas Supreme Court, that you will know that whatever you pass has to pass Second Amendment scrutiny. I know you know that. So do your colleagues across the aisle understand that Heller applies and its progeny?
Well, they don't like it, and they would, if we let them, they would they would try to erode the rights of law-abiding citizens. But none of these mass shootings, none of these gangbangers, none of this criminal activity involves law-abiding citizens. I mean, I own a number of firearms, and I'm not a threat to public safety, and the vast majority of firearms owners are not. And so there's no reason to try to erode the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. What we need to focus on are people that are undergoing mental health crises and people who have been adjudicated as mentally ill, as well as people who are criminals, which are currently barred by law from buying a firearm if it is in the background check system.
Now, Senator, the objection I receive from most gun enthusiasts is that the laws that the government passes never seem to get the killer in Charleston at Mother Emanuel. They never get the killers at Columbine, the killers at Parkland, the killer at Uvalde, the killer in Las Vegas. The background checks miss them. Does the new legislation open up juvenile records so that they can be inspected for the obvious signs in Parkland? I mean, that killer had many run-ins with the law, and the killer in Uvalde had many run-ins with school authorities. I mean, he was throwing dead cats on lawns and stuff. Does this law find a way to reach into their backgrounds and prevent them from buying a semi-automatic weapon?
That certainly is our goal, Hugh. You know, the wish list of the folks who would like to erode the Second Amendment is very long, and you'll notice that none of that is being considered. What we are trying to do is we're trying to narrowly address the situation at hand, like we did following the Sutherland Springs shooting, where the Air Force had failed to upload felony and domestic violence convictions for the shooter there, who then killed a lot of innocent people at a little Baptist church outside of San Antonio. I worked with Chris Murphy from Connecticut, a blue state senator, who he would like to do something much more aggressive. But what we did is we fixed that gap in the background check system by mandating that government agencies do so, incentivizing the states to populate the background check system. And we've seen 11.5 million new records uploaded into the system. But the system can't work if the information is not there.
So, Senator, the other objection is due process is at risk for would-be gun purchasers if a delay is allowed to be triggered by people who are simply angry with you or unhappy, even if you're a responsible gun owner or a responsible adult or anything like that. Do you think you have guardrails against the abuse of any new legislation by people who are just angry or just resent your politics, for example? Can it be turned around to hurt people who have legitimate reason to buy weapons?
Well, as you know, due process of law is a fundamental constitutional right, and we're not going to do anything to erode that either. One of the things I think people should understand is we're not going to pass a national red flag law. They do exist in some form in 19 states, and one of the things we are going to condition the access to the federal grant funding through the Department of Justice is going to be on the most rigorous due process standard that exists in the law today. They won't be able to get access to it unless they have that standard in place. But this is a subject I know of a lot of concern because people wonder, whether an aggrieved neighbor or ex-girlfriend or somebody could trigger this. One idea would be that it could only be triggered by law enforcement. We're still grappling with the contours of that. But again, these are state laws that the federal government does not have any control over, but we want to make sure that due process is protected to the maximum allowed.
Senator, I've been saying on the show a lot that the precedent for your approach is in the effort by the Mothers Against Drunk Driving to get the federal Congress to condition receipt of gas tax income to the states on their raising the drinking age to 21. That worked. It was constitutional under the spending clause. And it sounds to me like you're doing the same thing, but it's a much more complicated matter, correct? This is just harder.
Yeah, when Sutherland Springs occurred, that was kind of a single point of failure, and Uvalde involves multiple points of failure, as you noted. And what we are also doing is we are going to make probably the largest major investment in community-based mental health care ever in America as part of this bill. We're also going to make sure that schools can be hardened, no more soft targets. We're going to have officers there on campus along with the infrastructure necessary to protect our children. No parent should have to send their child to school fearful for their safety, and no child should have to go to school being afraid. And we intend to do everything we can to ensure their safety and to allay their fears.
Now, Senator, there are 131,000 K through 12 schools in America, public and private. That includes some religious schools. Will assistance to pay for police on campus exclusively go to government schools, or will private schools be eligible as well?
Well, I believe that all schools should be eligible. There's a set of best practices that have been adopted in part by the Secret Service and investigations that they've done. And of course, again, we can't force these local school districts to do things. I guess the states can do that within their jurisdiction, but we can certainly let everybody know what the best practices are. And if we can secure our airports, Hugh, we can certainly secure our schools.
I agree with this, Senator. I am afraid, though, that we will hear, as we always do, the incorrect interpretation of the Establishment Clause as barring federal grants to religiously based schools, Jewish day schools, Catholic parochial schools, you name it. They'll say you can't give support for police on campus to the local police department because that's an Establishment Clause breach. It's not, but have you heard that in the conversations with your colleagues?
No, that really hadn't come up in our current conversations, but you're right. That's traditionally been the position of the left, that they want to discriminate against religious schools. I think the current Supreme Court is helping us out a little bit by clarifying, I think in the Montana case fairly recently, that not all assistance to parochial schools is unconstitutional. In every conversation I've had with the Supreme Court nominees since I've been in the Senate, I've complained to them about the mess, which is the Establishment Clause jurisprudence, and begged them to clarify that so that really the policy of the federal government was neutrality, not discrimination.
Exactly. Let me close by asking you about the negotiations, Senator Cornyn. You've been there a long time. You're very effective. When people get down to business, they turn to you because you're a good lawyer as well as a good senator. How has this set of negotiations been different or better or worse than other complex negotiations?
Well, you can figure out when people actually want to get a result and when they are basically posturing and playing to the peanut gallery. Here, I would say to his credit, Chris Murphy is working in good faith. Kirsten Sinema has been this group of four along with Tom Tillis from North Carolina. Of course, we need to persuade a lot of other senators to join us once we sort of reach agreement among ourselves. And as you know, last Sunday we released a set of principles that enjoyed the support of 20 senators, 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats. The challenge, of course, as you know, is to translate those principles into text. And of course, people like to come back and try to renegotiate things all the time. And I think we're about run out of our rope here, and we got to make some final decisions today if we're going to be able to get this on the floor next week.
ABC, always be closing. I know you are a closer, Senator Cornyn. Good luck in getting this done. I like the framework. I think I'm with Leader McConnell on this. But the constitutionality is in the details, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Senator John Cornyn, good luck in that effort. I appreciate your coming on and joining us. Update us. Next week we can review, or the week thereafter, what you come up with. Have a good weekend and a good, productive day working with your Democratic colleagues.
Thanks, Hugh.
Thank you. That's why Mitch McConnell tapped John Cornyn. Man knows what he's doing. He's a good... You can rely on John Cornyn to not put forward an unconstitutional proposition. It will be constitutional vis-a-vis the Second Amendment. It will be constitutional vis-a-vis the 5th and 14th Amendment. It will be constitutional vis-a-vis the spending clause. It will be constitutional vis-a-vis the establishment and free exercise clauses. Because it doesn't matter what they pass if it's not constitutional. All right, that just will not fly. And I will be fly-specking it. Senator Cornyn, I remember when Senator Kyle, who liked Senator Cornyn, respected on both sides of the aisle, they came up with an immigration reform bill in 2006, and I read it closely, and the Z visa was just bad. So I had to argue with my good friend John Kyle, and he later came on and said, "You're right, the Z visa was a bad idea. We didn't do the details." That's why they got to get the details right. People like me read laws like this with an eye on what they actually do, and I trust John Cornyn. I do. And I talked to Tom Tillis about a different matter on Wednesday night, we were down at the premiere, or the rough cut showing of a documentary on the collapse in Afghanistan. These are smart people who are conservatives through and through, and constitutional Republicans, constitutionalists, originalists. They will get it right. I pray they will get it right, or there won't be a deal.